You smell that? There's drama in the air. Smells like a lot of butthurt, a lot of fanboying, a lot of people not being able to handle people with opposing opinions, and just a hint of people accusing Hasbro of being Hitler. This can only mean one thing. There's a new Equestria Girls movie in the works. Equestria Girls has always been a little special to me. It really marks my beginnings in the reviewer community. The first few videos on my channel were my thoughts on some of the early trailers, and my full review of the movie was my first video to pass 1,000 views, pushed me past 50 subscribers, and despite my awful old OC and microphone quality, that video is still one of my absolute favorite videos I've made. Those of you who were subscribed to me back then may remember that I originally wasn't very keen on Equestria Girls, but gradually became more warm to the idea as I saw more trailers, until eventually I saw the whole movie and reached the conclusion that it was, in fact, fantastic. And it seems that the same thing is likely to happen here with Rainbow Rocks. As much as I enjoyed the first movie, I first felt that Rainbow Rocks would just be some unnecessary sequel. But as I've seen more and more trailers and promotional material, I've now become very excited for the movie. I was originally planning on making this video the same way I did my very first one, where I split things up into things in the trailers that would make me think that Rainbow Rocks would be a good movie, and things that make me think it will be a bad movie. But I realized that wouldn't work, because the list for the former would take up an entire video, and the list for the latter was empty. Honestly, all the various trailers and sneak peeks have given me nothing but a good feeling about Rainbow Rocks. Even if the full movie turns out only half as good as these trailers would have me believe, I'd still consider it a huge improvement over the first movie. And this is coming from someone who loved the first movie. You see, I loved Equestria Girls for a more conceptual reason and for what the movie stood for. All my thoughts on the movie are hard to summarize, so I'd actually just recommend you go and watch my old video on it. That is, if you can stomach the awful quality of my videos back then. So while conceptually I thought the first Equestria Girls rocked, I still have to admit that on a number of more concrete aspects, the movie fell short. But for Rainbow Rocks, the concept is still there. The way I see it, if the first movie is what killed High School Musical, then Rainbow Rocks is coming back and dancing a jig on its grave, just to rub it in. But Rainbow Rocks is also improving in all other aspects. The villains have more personality, Sunset Shimmer is really going places, there's more information on the connection between worlds, and how could I forget the soundtrack? As you may have heard, the entire soundtrack for Rainbow Rocks has actually already been released. I originally just intended to listen to the little iTunes previews because I didn't want to spoil the one thing I was looking forward to the absolute most with the movie. But after listening to the previews, I caved and just had to buy the whole album. The soundtrack easily has to be one of the most notable improvements on the first movie, and I love the music in the first movie. Believe me when I say that I think the Rainbow Rocks soundtrack is some of Daniel Ingram's best work. It has the same strong focus on instrumentals that made Season 4's music legendary, but in an entirely new and unique style that Ingram pulls off perfectly. Heck, even if the rest of the movie somehow turns out to totally suck, I'd almost be willing to still give it a 10 out of 10, just from the music alone. Needless to say, I am very excited for Rainbow Rocks, but before this movie gets any closer, there are a few things that I need to set straight. There is one complaint about Rainbow Rocks that I have heard very, very often, and it is wrong. So let's end this video with some good old debunking. I often hear people say, Rainbow Rocks is breaking the series' own rules because the 30 moons for the mirror portal to open have not yet passed. This complaint is making the completely impossible assumption that you know how long 30 moons in equestrian time lasts in real-world time. If the show has made one thing very obvious, it's that an equestrian moon has absolutely no correlation to our months. Here's an example. Time between pilot episode and season 4 premiere. 1 year. Time between pilot episode and an episode a little over halfway through season 3, aka Apple Family Reunion, 100 moons. And I'm sure you could find dozens more examples of weird times all over the place. The show throws the term moon around so often and so arbitrarily that it's become almost meaningless. Attempting to create some kind of time scale to relate it to real-world time would be assuming a bunch of information that we simply don't have. In other words, a headcanon. So yes, complaining about Rainbow Rocks because 30 moons haven't passed yet is the equivalent of complaining about an episode because it disagrees with your personal headcanon, which I'm sure you don't need me to tell you is stupid, immature, and honestly just pathetic. Now that that's settled, there is nothing to get in the way of the Rainbow Rocks hype train. See you next week.